We need a name for the podcast, and I was thinking we could go with something just kind of completely innocuous in that, and I was just thinking like that one sports podcast,
Yeah,
just something
yeah, I
simple.
like it.
That one sports podcast.
If
Hey,
if
you listen to
something
that
comes
sports?
to me,
You listen to that podcast? Which podcast? That sports podcast. What sports podcast?
uh,
That sports podcast. Oh,
yeah,
you mean that sports podcast? Yeah, I'd watch that. I'd listen to it. It's pretty cool.
yeah. Pretty soon, people would be like, "It's that sports podcast."
Exactly. Exactly.
So we got some work to do first before we do that. And
All right. Thanks for watching another episode of That Sports Podcast. I am Brandon, and as always, with me is Anthony.
what's up, Brandon? How you doing?
I'm doing all right, buddy. So today we're going to talk about the Super Bowl because we didn't have a chance to talk about the Super Bowl last week. I moved, but that ain't got shit to do with sports. So let's talk about it. I called the Rams winning. It was a great game. I really thought it was going to come down to the wire, but that blown call changed the whole thing for me. That put points on the board that wouldn't have otherwise been there. The Bengals offense was pretty much stifled the entire game. I think outside of that touchdown, they only scored another field goal or something like that, or another two field goals or something. It wasn't that they're off. They just couldn't get in the end. The Bengals just couldn't get in the end zone. And it definitely changed the momentum of the game. And if the Bengals would have won, I would have been completely disgusted at the outcome of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, me too. Me too. The play. It was pretty obvious that Jalen Ramsey was stopped from doing his job there. I mean, with a face mask. I mean, not just like somebody pushed him or something like that. Like Jamar Chase like grabbed him, threw him around. So you know, um, you know, I just think in the end it was probably a lot closer than it should have been, right? I mean, this is a game that the Rams won on the touchdown to Cooper Cup, and won by I think 3 points. So without that touchdown, this is a lot like I predicted. It would have been like 23-13, something like that. So there you go again. It is not the first time, right, where we've been questioning the referees in the NFL.
Yeah, it definitely changed the entire game. I mean, you saw it. It was the Rams went from being the team that was going to score to the team that threw a pick, and now they're looking all sad on the sidelines and dejected and everything like that. But Matthew Stafford and those guys did a really good job, turning it around, and putting together a few drives and finally getting it in the end zone. With that game was definitely a lot more difficult without Odell being on the field. I mean, I know that him going down was a huge hurt to that offense. I mean, with just relying on Cooper Cup. So I can definitely see people making a case for Matthew Stafford winning that MVP. It's I don't want to say it's a shame that he didn't get it because at the end of the day, he did throw the interception. It is on his stat column. But I know some people could make a case why he should win it. Anthony, I know you want to make your case, so go on ahead, do it, do so now.
Sure, yeah, and Matt Stafford. I sort of think that the quarterback should usually win it if they put together a game-winning drive, if they're relatively good. And I know that that's not really how it's done, right? It goes to the best player, the guy who had the absolute best game, as it should be. But I think in this case that, Stafford held his nerve throughout the second half here and was able to put together that game winning drive. Yes, he had an interception earlier in the game, but I think that he held his nerve and did a good job at the end of the game. So that's basically the reason. The other thing about that is that during the New York Giants, two Super Bowl wins from 10 years ago in 2007-11, Eli Manning played actually worse. I think he had less yards than Stafford, and he definitely threw a pick in one of those games than Stafford. So, and he got the MVP. So he got the MVP twice. So listen, at the end of the day, it's motivation for Stafford to maybe get there again and win an MVP. But that's basically what I think is that Stafford played better than Eli did in those two Super Bowls, and he should have got it this time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, the only reason it's he didn't win it was because it's all subjective, right? Like Eli drove the team down, they won the game. The scenarios were different. And at the end of the day, it was, I mean, then they had who? Plexico Burris, the one year that they won, and the next year that they won, they didn't have that much talent on the receiving end, on the receiver side. So it's like, yeah, who else are they going to give it to? Eli was the one whipping the ball around the field. He was the one that giving everybody the chance to catch the ball, so they were going to give it to him. But with Matthew Stafford's case, I mean, you're watching the whole game and you see him throw that ugly pick at the one of the most critical junctures in the game, the point of the game where they needed a score. They had just that big no call by the ref, and then all of a sudden the following drive, Matthew Stafford turns the ball over, and we can say, oh, the wide receiver had a chance to catch it, and we can make all the excuses we want, but at the end of the day, that goes as a drop as for that wide receiver, and still is an interception for Matthew Stafford. So it just looks bad optically, and I mean, I could see why you'd make that case for Matthew Stafford, but Cooper Kupp was the one that had to really carry the team after Odell went down and everything like that. The running game wasn't doing much to speak of, so it had to be Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, and you know, yeah, it's interesting about the Beckham situation there. If he had Beckham, how much more of a lead would it? How much more would they have won this game by? Because Beckham had a touchdown at the beginning of the game. Looked like he was set for an MVP performance, right, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, he was playing really well. I mean, he's played really well since he's been out there. His problem is that he's injury prone now. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Can he stay healthy for the entire season and, keep playing at a high level of the way he's doing now? I mean, we'll see. It'll be interesting. When I called the game, I said that when we talked about the Super Bowl in the podcast episode before the Super Bowl that happened, I talked about all it takes is for one of these players to make a play, and sure enough, we got one from just about everybody. You know what I mean? Everybody showed up to make a play that day, and that's what the difference was. Uh, Despite that horrible no call, Aaron Donald coming through at the end of the game to seal the deal. He lives up to the legend for me now. You know what I mean? Like, he was always a talented player, but it's like he was the one that shut the door, the one that really was like, you know what, you guys are not coming back. There's no chance. It's me who's telling you this. I'm sending the message.
Yeah, big Aaron Donald. He just came in there. I mean, I think the foreshadowing for his big sack at the end of the game was him pushing Burrow out of bounds. Remember that in the first half?
Yeah.
Like that was like when he did that, I thought that he was going to give Burrow all kinds of trouble throughout the game. And to the Bengals offensive line's credit, they managed to like you said, bottle him up.
Oh
But
yeah, definitely. I mean, he was relatively quiet the entire game. I mean, it it, it was it was quite the sight to see. You know what I mean? Just watching them be able to keep the pressure at bay for the majority of the game. The majority of the game, Joe Burrow was, I don't want to say not pressured, but he wasn't seeing that typical Rams defense just tear up that offensive line. So, a lot of credit goes to them, but that offense still wasn't going on all cylinders. I mean, they still were having trouble getting up the field, still having trouble putting points on the board and stuff like that. And I can't necessarily say that was Joe Burrow's fault either. I mean, the Rams defense is just good on and they play well in all phases.
sure, well, the Rams defense is stacked. Um, basically in the secondary, you have a Pro Bowler and Jalen Ramsey, and then you have two former defensive players of the year in Von Miller and Aaron Donald as pass rushers. So it's a stacked defense. Just the fact that the Bengals offensive line could keep them at bay is incredible. And let's watch out here. The Bengals are going to be a good team for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. Um, So let's talk about the Super Bowl celebration. We all saw that video by now where Matthew Stafford turns on that girl who falls off the stage. I guess she was taking pictures or something like that, and she fell off the stage. I laughed when I first saw the video, and I didn't know she broke her spine when I first saw the video do I feel do I feel bad for laughing? No, I don't. I I still think it's funny. I mean, she was careless. I'm sorry she was careless. I'm sorry she got hurt. You know what I mean? I'm a human being. I feel for her. I hope she recovers and, she's not a paralyzed or anything like that. Hopefully, she can get whatever she needs out of get whatever, medical procedure she needs to be able to, move around and be free to move around and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I understand Matthew Stafford's reaction. After our production meeting, I had to sit there and think about a time when I laughed at something that was completely inappropriate. This girl, we were at a pep rally. The cheerleader went up in the air. She came down. They didn't catch her, and she bounced. And I just looked over at everybody and I was like, she bounced. And I started laughing. And then people were upset with me. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the bathroom and leave this scenario because they're getting mad at me for laughing at this girl because she bounced. I thought it was fucking funny. So I left, come back, she's fine and everything like that. And then we all had a laugh about it. Then it was the appropriate time to joke about it. And I was like, so why is it okay now? Because everybody knows she's okay. Forget you guys for making me feel bad for that. But it was my initial reaction. It's not like I didn't feel bad for her. You know what I mean? Like if I've tripped going up the stairs and I laugh at myself, So I mean, I laugh at things. And so when I saw Matthew Stafford's reaction, it was like, I would have rather him done that than oh she fell. You know what I mean? Like I felt like it was a classy move of him to grab the water, take a sip of the water, turn his back and stuff like that, and be like, hey, can you go see if she's okay? Whatever he did after he turned around. You know what I mean? I don't know what all his thought process was, but I can only imagine how much worse it would have been if he's standing there going, hey, somebody go help her. How the fuck does that help? You know what I mean? What is like
Yeah.
everybody didn't see her fall off the stage. Everybody's looking his direction, their direction. Everybody's looking at them. So of course they saw her fall off the stage. Of course the people who are going to go help are going to go help. So how is that helping? But how is looking at laughing? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of other things that he could have done, and I commend him for not looking like an asshole in that scenario, by laughing or carrying on and stuff like that. Because to me, the whole situation just looked like he was ready to laugh. He took a sip of the water conveniently. I mean, turned his back like real casually and stuff like that. Like it just looked like he was trying to shield himself from the cameras of catching him laughing and stuff.
I totally agree that he was turning his back to avoid having a terrible moment where he was like pointing at it, or not pointing, but he was definitely ready to laugh. I mean, I think I even saw the smirk on his face as he turned. But yeah, I mean, I guess part of the idealist in me thinks that somebody as well known as Stafford and the Super Bowl winning quarterback should lean over and go look on and check on the girl, at least, instead of turning your back. So that's just he turned his back for a reason, but that reason was his self-preservation. And at the end of the day, he did not go and look at her, which I think would have been better. I mean, that would have been a better look. But what I did read afterwards in an article about that event was that he asked his wife to go check on her, and as you could see in the video, she does go pretty much right away to go check on her. So there was not a total lack of empathy there.
I mean, and I can't imagine that he saw somebody fall and was just like, his first initial reaction was to laugh. I would have, when
Yeah.
in that scenario, if I would have seen somebody, I would have sent somebody over there to go help her too. I wouldn't have been over there because how fucked up is it that I'm trying to help her out and I'm trying to contain my laughter at the same time, right? Like I can't do that. That doesn't work, And sometimes it makes people feel worse about the scenario. Like I don't care, but I do care. It's just my initial reaction. It's just what's happening. It's involuntary. I'm not laughing at that person intentionally. It's just like it just sort of happened. So, like I said, I commend Matthew Stafford for doing what he did and, sending his wife over there to check to see if she's okay. At the end of the day, though, I feel like the scrutiny is just kind of unfair because everybody acts like we're supposed to react the same way. Some people care more about animals than other people do. You know what I mean? Like some people will see a video of a bird flying into a window and laugh, whereas others will sit there and be like, oh my gosh, I hope that bird's okay. You know what I mean? Like that we're all different in that regard. So, like I said, big ups to Matthew Stafford for not just sitting there going, ha, 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 she fell. Because that could have been way worse, right? Like
Yeah.
then I would be like, dude, what is wrong with you? You can't do that. That's horrible. You need to get off the stage, remove yourself from the scenario. Like, come on, man. You just won a Super Bowl and now you want everybody to hate you too now? Come on.
And he threw a pick in the Super Bowl. It was bad.
Right, right,
Everybody's
right,
really
right.
jumping on you.
All right.
But yeah,
So
yeah.
let's continue talking about bad looks. So Juwan Howard slapped a coach after a game. Michigan was losing pretty bad. The coach called a timeout. They were up big, and Juwan didn't want to shake their hands, shake the coach's hand after the game. But in spirit of sportsmanship, he reluctantly went over there to go shake the coach's hand. Excuse me. That's when the coach, grabbed his hand and made him stand there to listen to what he had to say, and then somebody got slapped. So in my mind, I feel like the suspension was a bit much. The fine, yeah, completely fine with. And if anybody should have got suspended, it was the person who instigated the whole scenario in the first place, which in my mind was Greg Gard, because he was the one that stopped Juwan Howard from just going by, right? Like he was the one that was like, "Oh no, you're going to listen to what I got to say. You're going to stand here while I talk to you, even though you don't like me, even though you want to leave." Like that should never happen. We're all adults. If you don't like me, cool. You can go don't not like me over there, and I'll go not like you over here. But you're not going to sit here and make and demand my attention. You're not going to make me stand here, because if you are, that's when my temper raises and stuff like that, and you're in my face at your own peril. And that's what I saw. you know Juwan Howard did the respectful thing and the grown man thing by going up there, shaking his hand, being an example and being a leader and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, Greg Gard had no right to put his hands on him, had no right to stall him there and stuff like that. He should have just let him go by if he didn't want somebody to get hit.
I totally agree. That was what incited, I think, Juwan Howard to slap the coach. Was that right?
I
Was
mean, you
that
just don't
yeah,
put your hands on nobody. It's that simple. Like, regardless, it doesn't matter what the context is. He could have shook his hand, let the man go by, but no, he wanted to pretend like he was some big man and he had to listen to what he had to say, and that's what happens.
yeah, yeah, and it doesn't look good for Juwan Howard. Obviously, he got hit with the suspension for 5 games, which essentially stopped him from coaching Michigan in the for the rest of the regular season. And I just yeah, it's difficult for both college basketball and Michigan programs. Uh, but at the end of the day, we have to think about whether the handshake line should stay around. And I know that there was an article I was reading where Georgetown's head coach Patrick Ewing, former New York Knick All-Star, came out and said, "Listen, I don't think that this should stay around. There's no reason. The only thing that it could cause is more trouble," is what he said. He says more. You're giving an opportunity for the tempers to flare again and stuff like that. So I think that he's right on about that. I know that Tom Izzo, the head coach of Michigan State, though, says it should stay around. So I don't know, Brandon. Where do you fall in that balance there?
I think it needs to go away. I mean, it just creates another situation in which fights can happen. Fights break out and stuff. I mean, when you compete in anything, tensions can rise. You know what I mean? And especially when you get into ugly losses, wins where the wins are really more critical and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Um, it hurts a little bit. Like your pride gets hurt, your feelings get hurt. Like there's a lot going on inside you when you lose in those moments. But even more than that, it gives those abysmal winners and losers an opportunity to create more drama and more problems and stuff like that, because no one really talks about the abysmal winners. You know what I mean? People always talk about the losers and why they did something, but no one ever talks about why the losers did what they did. It's like, because the people who incited it were the winners. The people who are sore, who are poor winners, don't know how to just let the losers be the losers and stuff like that. Walk off the court, show some respect for their opponents and everything. They played their hearts out. They showed they showed that they could compete and everything, and they came up short. Right? They've been in that scenario, and people will still just and just keep on doing it. So it just gives them it just gives on either end, it just gives these people another opportunity to sit there and keep on and we don't need that. We needed a erase from sports, because at the end of the day, they're all grown men, and you're not going to teach somebody to not be a poor sport by making them shake somebody's hand, because it just gives them another opportunity to be in somebody's face.
Totally agree. Yep. No,
All
that's
right.
it.
So the ESPN released their NBA 75th anniversary team Kobe Bryant was ranked number 10. LeBron was ranked number 2. Michael Jordan was ranked number 1, which I have no problem with. But I felt like Kobe Bryant was completely disrespected by being at number 10 and LeBron being at number 2. Um, everything that Kobe's legacy and everything that Kobe Bryant did for the modern era of basketball. I mean, there are so many things that Kobe Bryant did that other players haven't even, that LeBron James hasn't even come close to. Yeah, he scored a lot of points and stuff like that. Yeah, he's been around the league for a long time, but Kobe still has more rings than LeBron. Kobe still did it in a time where he didn't quit on a team to go play with another team so they could win. You know what I mean? He won all his titles with the Lakers. LeBron gave up. He quit on the Cavaliers. He gave the Cavaliers what, 7-8 seasons and was like, I quit. I'm going down to South Beach because they can win a title. They can win a title down there. And then even when he went down to South Beach, he wasn't the deciding factor in that. He was not the deciding factor in that. There were big games where LeBron James was being guarded in the playoffs by other players and stuff like that, and he was shut down. He was rendered ineffective. It was D Wade and Chris Bosh who carried the team, and Ray Allen and all those other guys who carried the team in some of those critical moments. LeBron James was just there. I would even go so far as to say is those Miami teams still would have won without LeBron James. That they still brought in Chris Bosh, they still had D Wade and the rest of those guys. They didn't need LeBron James to win. If LeBron James had decided he was going to sign with the Knicks after he left Cleveland, the Miami Heat still had a viable roster, and I think they still had a championship team. LeBron James was just there. That was it. And he's always going to, whenever he's on a team, he's going to get his points. He's going to score. He's a great basketball player. He's just not one of the greatest basketball players. In my mind, he's not a competitor. He just wants to be friends with everybody, join up forces and stuff like that, and dominate the league so that way he can further his legacy, further his image, be considered one of the greats. But to me, he's never going to be one of the greats. I wouldn't even put him inside my top 10.
That's interesting. I think that Kobe was disrespected. He should be higher up on the list. I think, Kobe's impact in sports in general, not just the NBA, has been amazing, in the last 2 decades. And we're all very sorry to have lost him, at this point. And I just think, your argument about LeBron, it's interesting. We've debated about this quite a bit. And, I think that LeBron did put the Heat team in 2012 in his first championship over the hump. But they had great players other than him. No, there's no doubt. I mean, that team really was as stacked as it gets for the last 10 years, because even the Spurs, who were the great dynasty right before LeBron sort of came around and in the beginning, even the Spurs, I mean, with Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili, didn't quite stack up to Wade, LeBron, and Bosh, did they? So, it's close, but I think that certainly on those Heat teams, I think LeBron was the X factor. I think that I think that, look, the biggest proof of that is that if you do think that Kobe should be higher on the list, I watched the Final Ring documentary, and they were talking about how in the 2009-10 season, basically the NBA centered around the rivalry between Kobe and LeBron. LeBron was emerging as the heir apparent, the successor to Kobe as the best player in the NBA at that point. And so for that reason, if Kobe's up here, right, LeBron's got to be, with what he's accomplished, he's got to be up there too. Because
how do you accomplish anything when you quit? He was with Cleveland for 7 years and quit, flat out quit. You can't beat him, join him. That was his mentality. Well, Michael Jordan didn't have that mentality. Michael Jordan was getting dogged when he first got in the league by the Pistons and all those teams back in the day. He was getting dogged, manhandled. He bulked up, he went out, he handled his business like a man. LeBron James quit. And then when he went, but when Miami couldn't take him to another championship or another title, he got his rings down there, he quit on them too. And then went back to Cleveland where they were building another team. And then when Cleveland couldn't get it done again, he quit and then left to go to LA. And then when look at LA now. They've had their little bit of success, but look at the shit show that they are now. They're not winning nothing. All for all of LeBron James's talents and everything that they got going on, they not winning nothing. They are what, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th place right now. They're flirting on the bottom half of the bracket, looking at everybody else, trying to blame Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis and all these other players. LeBron James is the reason that team is not playing well, because for all he is, why is the team not playing well? Because LeBron James is there. All he wanted to do was stack the deck.
That's true. But isn't this list about just talent? Isn't it about just, I mean, it's about what they accomplished. But I think when you really get down to it, the 75th anniversary team compiles the league's most talented players. Does it not? It does not. Like, for instance, you could have a player on there, Oscar Robinson or whatever. Did Oscar Robinson win as many titles as as Jordan did, as LeBron has, who has 4, as Kobe did?
What I'm saying is that if LeBron never leaves Cleveland, does he have the same accolades that he has now? I do not believe that.
Okay.
I believe that a lot of his accolades are simply because he went and joined forces with other players, period. You can sit here and tell me, oh, he averages 30, 40 points a night and stuff like that. It's easy to average 30, 40 points a night when you don't have to average 30, 40 points a night, dude, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think he doesn't get to 4 titles because if he stays with Cleveland all those years, maybe 1 or 2 at the most. So he doesn't get to 4 titles. But would that mean that we think, this is the question, do we think of him as less of a player if he doesn't get to 4 titles? That's my question.
My point isn't about the titles. My point is the fact that I've never seen LeBron. Like, the only time I saw LeBron James be LeBron James was early in his career. The first 7 years of his career was when LeBron James was LeBron James. After he left Cleveland and went to Miami, he wasn't LeBron James anymore. He was now the guy chasing the legacy, chasing rings, chasing a title, chasing a championship. Everything he did, I'm not saying he's not a great basketball player. Is he going to be one of the greatest basketball players to go down in history? Yeah, the stats say so. But I don't believe that his stats are reflective of what's going on. Because if you looked at him compared to everybody else in the league back when he was in Cleveland, he wasn't doing as much. He was still averaging like 20 something points a game and everything like that. But could he maintain that throughout an entire season if he had to? He proved that he couldn't. 7 years he was on the with the Cavaliers, and how many seasons did they have to rely on him to carry them to a title? He proved that he could not carry consecutively. He didn't want to do it anymore. He couldn't do it. How long did Michael Jordan go at it? How long did Kobe Bryant go at it? How long did all of these other players go at it before they decided to throw in the towel and call it quits?
Well, the thing about Kobe for me, and I am not an expert on his career, but I believe that the Lakers won in his second or third season, didn't they?
Something like that. Because I think they got Shaq relatively quickly, because the Magic, I believe he became a free agent from the Magic, and then Shaq came over. They picked up Shaq as a free agent, and then it was just like it was on. The Lakers were just an unstoppable force. They were just crazy good at that point. Now they brought in other players like Rick Fox and Robert Horry and all these other players and stuff like that. Some of them were already there. But I mean, when you start looking at the team that they had built, it was all centered around Kobe Bryant. It was all hinging around Kobe Bryant, because they got rid of Shaq's ass and they were still successful without Shaq. They were still successful, largely successful without Shaq, and they still won rings and championships without Shaq. The only problem was that Kobe Bryant was getting older. And I think the reason that a lot of people want to take away from Kobe Bryant's legacy is because his last few seasons, he was hurt a lot. They don't remember the great Kobe Bryant. They don't remember the Black Mamba in his prime and all that kind of shit. All they remember is his last 3 seasons when he was hurt. He wasn't playing that well and stuff like that. Yeah, he was still getting his buckets and everything, but he wasn't there. The Lakers were doing bad and stuff like that. They'd missed the playoffs and stuff. They were a terrible team at that point.
Yeah. But my point there about Kobe is that he won early in his career. So any struggle, I mean, he still had to struggle at points in his career and be a great player.
Yeah,
but any struggle at the beginning of his career wasn't there like it was for LeBron. Like Kobe came in the league, and then in 2 years, all of a sudden the Lakers are a championship team and they're winning, and they, you know what I mean? With LeBron, he
Yeah,
comes to
cut me a
Cleveland.
break, dude. Cut me a break. LeBron took the Cavs to the playoffs 5 out of the 7 years they were there. The 5 out of the 7 years he was there. Okay. I don't want to hear LeBron James struggled or this, that, and the third. They had their opportunities. They made they took their shots. And at the end of the day, LeBron James couldn't get it done. And when he couldn't get it done, he quit. It's as simple as that. And then everything else after that has just been a gravy train on biscuit wheels. I'm not saying that it wasn't hard, but it's easy to score 20, 30 points a night when you don't have to do it every single night. When you're the guy that's third on the list or second on the list, there's other guys who are playing around you who can carry the load and stuff like that. Your mind is not, you don't have to worry about all that pressure. Right. Like, and I sent you the article with Stephen A. He even pointed out during those championship playoff runs and stuff like that, Derek, what was it, Jason Terry and Jason Kidd were guarding LeBron James and pretty much rendered him ineffective in the games again in the series against them. So
Okay.
I don't want to hear, oh, he was the X factor and this, that, and the third. Because if they rendered him useless and the Heat lost, guess what?
Well, I think that they played great against him. That's what it is. I mean, they were the X factors there. That doesn't make LeBron less of an X factor, does it?
Yes. How do you get guarded by
In general,
two guys?
in general.
The X factor players don't get shut down out of games. When Michael Jordan was playing basketball, in Michael Jordan's career,
Mhm.
how many times was he ever really shut down?
I can't name any. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
he
yeah,
won.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
but I'm not comparing Jordan. I mean, like, I'm just talking about LeBron's greatness. I mean, LeBron in his ability to do everything offensively. I mean, he's a great player. Like, we don't have in the game, or we haven't had. I mean, we had Kobe, but I think that it speaks for itself that, you know, Kobe won with Shaq, okay, because he had a physical presence with him on the team. And after that, he won one championship. And with LeBron, it's like on all the championship teams that he's been on, it seems like he's been the straw that stirs the drink. I mean, if you're telling me that in 2017 with Cleveland, in 2017, that Cleveland team, I mean, LeBron's absolutely the X factor. I think we agree on that. I mean, like
LeBron
Cleveland going
isn't
to
the X factor. How do you take a team 5 years to the playoffs? 5 out of the 7 years you take it to the playoffs and then quit. And then everywhere he goes after that, they go, oh, he's a championship player. He's stirring the drink. He's the one carrying the team to the playoffs. Get out of here, dude. He was carrying the Cleveland Cavaliers to the playoffs. He rode D Wade's coattails. Then he went back to Cleveland where they had already put together a solid team without LeBron James' ass. The only reason they wanted LeBron James back was because he can average 20 something points a night. If LeBron James was willing to stay in Cleveland, was willing to stay in Miami and not go back to Cleveland or go anywhere else, Cleveland would have been just fine. Because guess what? All they would have needed was to find somebody else to help them get over the hump. And I understand what you might be thinking. Oh, LeBron James was the one that stirred the drink. If LeBron James was the one that stirred the drink, how come he didn't take fucking Cleveland to the promised land the first time he was there? They had the same caliber of players when he was there. The point guards, all the people around him, the chips around him. How do you think he made it to the playoffs in the first place? He carried the team, sure, but he was not the person that was going to stir their drink and carry him to the playoff, to the championship. Now he goes down to Miami and he's the difference maker. No, Miami was 2 years removed from the playoffs from that point anyway.
That's Miami. Miami, he had Wade with him, he had Bosh, but I don't know. I think that there's a lot of details here, and we're probably going to agree to disagree on James. I think that there's a lot of details here. If you look at certain, obviously, you separate the Heat is one situation. The Cavs, the second time around. I mean, you have a young Kyrie Irving and then LeBron. I mean, you don't
Get
have.
out of here. They had more than Kyrie Irving at that point.
They had
If I'm
Richard
not mistaken,
Jefferson.
yeah, exactly. They had
They
Richard
have
Jefferson. I
David
believe they had Tristan
Dellavedova.
Thompson and stuff like that. They had a
Tristan
solid
Thompson's
team.
good.
They had a solid team before LeBron James came back. That's why it was desirable for LeBron James to go back.
They had a solid team, but did they have a championship, a team that was capable of winning a championship before he got there? I say no. I say no in that year. Yeah, did they have a very good team? But here's the thing. You say that, why didn't LeBron win it in his first 7 years? Well, he's a young player. And
Oh, okay. Because
well, no,
because young players don't win early in their careers. That's it. We're done.
Kobe
We're done.
Kobe
We're
did,
done.
but
We're moving on from the conversation.
all right.
We're moving on from the conversation. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. Don't even want to hear it no more.
They didn't
Kemba
have
Walker,
sorry,
Kemba
those,
Walker, Kemba
those
Walker,
Cavs team didn't
Kemba
have it.
Walker, Kemba Walker, and his team have decided that they are going to mutually sit him down for the rest of the season. I think it's a convenient bullshit cover story. What is your thoughts on it?
All right. Well, the Kemba Walker thing is a disgrace. It's a disgrace to basketball. It's a disgrace to sports. And the Knicks should be ashamed of themselves. They're giving up on this season. They're telling their fans that, here's a player that, he was at one point, he's a very good young player in the game. He was somebody, I think that coming to the Knicks, he's certainly he's had a slip up here. He's been in and out of the lineup this year, hasn't been consistent. So I really don't get it, Brandon. I just don't. And maybe you can help me out with it, because I just think that it's like, here we are, we're throwing in the towel, and it's more of the same old with the Knicks, who made the playoffs last year. So it's disappointing for me as a fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff like this is like I said, it's a convenient cover story. It's they can't come out and say that they're throwing the rest of the season, they're throwing in the towel, or that they're looking at trading Kemba and stuff like that. They can't say that in the public. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't want to release all that kind of information. So what they're really saying, but
Hmm.
that the PR side of it is that this is what they got to say. Oh, we've mutually agreed we're going to set our best player, that one of our star players, down for the rest of the season because we don't want him to get hurt. We want to look towards the future. Blah 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 blah. It's a load of crap. I mean, like you said, they're throwing in the towel on the season, and in my honest opinion, I don't like the idea of it, because as a fan of sports, it's like, why am I watching? You know what I mean? Why did I watch this if you're just going to throw in the towel? Why am I spending my money? Why am I giving up my free time if you guys aren't even going to compete anymore?
Yeah, and that's the fans' perspective, and we can't help but look at it from that. And the front office perspective is different, and I think we understand that the front office wants to look a few years down the line, wants to say, hey, what's going to happen next year? Maybe we do want to trade Kemba Walker and get as much back as we can, because we don't see Kemba Walker as being a part of our organization going forward. So that's their perspective. But at the same time, it's a weird move. It's just weird. I don't see any other teams doing this. I think we talked about the New York Rangers and hockey doing it, who are ironically owned by the same owner, James Dolan. So you wonder if this is coming, down from him. I mean, I think that it's a weird move by the Knicks. It says I'm throwing in the towel in the season. I don't like it either.
Yeah,
so we agree on that.
Yeah,
not LeBron James.
No, not at all. We will never see eye to eye on that. No, we will never. I'm sorry, when you take the easy road, I just don't see it. I just don't see it as being, the same.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So let's finish this episode out with some Winter Olympic talk. I believe they're winding down or about done with the Winter Olympics. I believe the U.S. is like fourth or fifth in the medal count. I believe Norway or something like that is up top, someplace cold where it snows a lot, and they have all those kind of winter sports. Anthony and I were talking during our production meeting, trying to figure out why, it was such a disparity between the Summer Olympics and the Winter Olympics, why we dominate the summer sports and the winter sports. So Anthony, why don't you go ahead and share your opinion on that first?
Oh boy, Brandon. I mean, the Winter Olympics is something, as a hockey fan, I got the Rangers hat on right here. I take pride in our our USA hockey teams, both the women's and the men's. And, this year, USA women's team, they did solid again. Okay. Listen, we didn't defend the gold. And obviously, I'm disappointed about that. But you go against a juggernaut in Canada and you play a 2-goal game and you lose. Hey, listen, that's the way it goes, right, Brandon? But the men's team knocked out in the quarterfinals to Slovakia. Come on. We don't tolerate that here. We're winners, come on now. Okay. That's disappointing. Michaela Schifrin on the slopes, the skier, multiple gold medals in past Olympics, coming into this Olympics is one of the most talked about athletes, Brandon, most talked about athletes. And she throws up a dud at these Olympics, no gold medals, nothing. Come on, man. I mean, it was a very disappointing games from that perspective. So I don't know what you saw or whatever, but tell me about it.
I think that most of the athletes go for the summer sports. I mean, let's be honest, we live in a country where it's mostly warm. You don't have a lot of people don't have access to the winter sports. You can't, do certain things year round in like some other places. You know what I mean? Like some places it's cold year round, so they can actually ski and do all that kind of stuff year round. When I think about skiing and all the winter sports, I look at it as mostly, a northeast type thing, you know what I mean, up north where it's cold, New York, Connecticut, Delaware, all those places where it really snows and you get all that really really cold weather, Canada, places like that, so it's easy for me to look at it and go, yeah, we dominate the Summer Olympics because most of our country is warm. Most of our country plays most of the sports that, in those spring and summer months that we can still play. Even in the winter, people are playing football and stuff like that. They're still playing other sports. So, like I said, there's just this idea that we're supposed to dominate in everything, but we can't dominate in everything because we don't we don't have the climate for everything. I don't know where people practice curling at. I don't. Do they have curling centers in America? I can't imagine that there's like a whole network of them that people just know about and other people don't know about. So I mean, obviously they've probably got some places where you can practice and ice hockey rinks, but like I said, most of America's in a warm climate, and hockey isn't necessarily one of the favorite things to do out in the middle of the desert in Arizona, so
Yeah.
I think that's the reason we see such a disparity, why we don't do so well in the Winter Olympics versus the Summer Olympics. I mean, we dominated in the Summer Olympics. I think we got like 200 and some odd medals or something like that. So it's like we were really killing it in all the outdoor warm sports, but when it comes to the cold ones, you can see why. It's mostly a rich people sport, you know what I mean? People who can access it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And then, as a country, the US, we put our faith in the Winter Olympics in certain athletes like Michaela Schifrin. And then when they don't perform, listen, I'm not here to dump on her and whatever. And, maybe she just didn't have a great games. Maybe there was something going on with her other than what was going on the slopes. But you put your faith in like a very few athletes, it seems like, whereas in the winter, but in the summer, you're talking about, we've got track and field runners from all over in various events. We have other events that we're good at, like swimming. I mean, the swimming, I think we've been the most dominant country.
There's the cycling events,
Yeah.
the shooting events. I mean, there's all the different Summer Olympic events that people can cheer for and stuff like that. I mean, there's just way more outdoor stuff to do for people. But yeah, anyway, all right, that is our show for this episode. I am Brandon. This is Anthony. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Peace out.